When I came home that night, all I wanted was quiet. The soft hum of cicadas, the shimmer of sunset over my pool, that small slice of peace I worked hard for. Instead, my driveway was blocked by a sideways SUV, my windows were shaking from bass-thumping party music, and there were strangers splashing in my pool like it was the neighborhood water park. And right at the center of it all, Karen. Wide-brimmed hat, oversized sunglasses, margarita in hand. She looked straight at me, raised her glass, and yelled, "Welcome to the party, neighbor. Don't just stand there, grab a drink." That was the moment I knew this wasn't a misunderstanding. It was an invasion. I stood there frozen on the gravel keys, still in my hand, watching a man I'd never seen before cannonball into my deep end while another dragged one of my patio chairs across the concrete. Beer cans littered my grill, wet towels hung over my fence, and someone's flip-flops were sitting on top of my mailbox. My dog barked from inside, but even his voice was swallowed by the music. I walked forward slowly, calm, deliberate steps. If Karen wanted a scene, she wasn't going to get one from me. When I reached her, she tilted her sunglasses down, smirked, and said, "Don't look so shocked. It's a neighborhood thing. We all voted your pool is basically a community resource now." I told her flat out that nobody had asked me, nobody had that right, and she had exactly 3 minutes to get everyone out before I called the sheriff. She laughed. "Don't be dramatic. We're not hurting anyone. You should be proud people love your pool so much." One of her friends yelled, "Best pool in town," before diving in and splashing my legs. The water was warm, sticky with beer, and that was when the calm inside me started to harden into something sharper. I unplugged the speakers from the wall, and for a moment, everything went quiet. Then Karen snapped her fingers, ordered someone to plug it back in, and smiled at me. "Not when the HOA says it's communal," she said. "Don't you keep up with the bylaws?" That was when I realized that she'd planned this. This wasn't some spontaneous neighborhood hangout. She had convinced her little clique that my pool somehow belonged to them. I clenched my fists behind my back, told her one last time to leave, and when she didn't, I walked inside without another word. From behind my window, I started recording. Every car parked illegally, every face I could recognize, every can they left behind. Evidence. By the time the sheriff arrived hours later, the party had died down. Karen had already vanished, leaving behind broken furniture, soggy chips, and a laminated sign propped against my fence. "Pool open hours. HOA approved." I threw it straight into the trash. That night, as I scrubbed beer off my patio stones, I whispered to myself, "She just wrote her own ending." The next morning, the sun rose over the mess she left behind. Muddy tire tracks, beer bottles shoved into bushes, cloudy pool water. My neighbor Paul stopped me outside the hardware store. He said, "Heard about the invasion," shaking his head. "Karen's bragging she's hosting another party next weekend. She's calling it the Pool Club." I laughed, but his face stayed serious. That's when I knew this wasn't over. So Saturday came, and so did the cars. But this time I was ready. I had locked the gate with a heavy chain and stood on my porch, coffee in hand, waiting. The first guests arrived, tugged the chain confused. Then Karen showed up in her golf cart, bright pink streamers flying. When she saw the gate chained, her jaw dropped. She marched toward me, demanding, "What do you think you're doing?" I told her calmly. "The pool's private property. No one gets in without permission." She scoffed. "This is harassment. The HOA voted. I asked for paperwork." She had none. Instead, she signaled 2 guys who pulled out bolt cutters and snapped the chain in front of everyone. The crowd cheered like it was a victory. I recorded every second. That night I posted the footage online, "HOA President Invades Private Pool." Within hours it went viral. Comments exploded, some laughed, others were furious. But the next weekend she doubled down. This time she showed up with even more guests, music louder than ever, and a printed sign reading, "HOA schedule approved." It looked official. She even brought a megaphone. I tried to reason with her, told her it was trespassing. She smirked and said, "Don't be so stiff. The community needs this." Her friends chimed in, "Yeah, stop being greedy. It's just water." That's when something inside me cracked, not from rage, but from disbelief. I looked around at all these people who believed I was the villain, my own backyard, and somehow I was the outsider. That night, as I picked up beer cans again, I sat by the pool staring at the rippling water. I felt small, powerless. Maybe I was overreacting. Maybe I should just let it go. What's one pool compared to the stress of fighting a whole community? But then from beyond the fence I heard it. The low, rhythmic croak of frogs from the wetlands nearby. I closed my eyes and smiled for the first time in weeks. Maybe nature had an answer for Karen. Over the next few nights I started collecting them, one by one. It was ridiculous, really, a grown man with a net and a flashlight catching frogs. But the more I gathered, the more it made sense. They were small, unpredictable, wild, the exact opposite of Karen's control. I built crates in my garage, fed them bugs, and listened every night as they croaked like an army waiting for orders. Meanwhile, Karen was making her rounds, bragging about a peace deal. She even showed up at my porch with a plate of cookies, saying she wanted to compromise. We'll make a schedule. Some days for the neighbors, some days for you. I asked her why I should compromise on something that was already mine. She grinned and said, "Because it's what's best for the community." I told her I'd consider it. She left smiling like she'd won. She had no idea she'd just given me the time I needed. By Thursday, glossy flyers started popping up: Summer Kickoff Pool Bash, sponsored by HOA funds, her magnum opus, the big one, and I was ready. That night I loaded the crates into my truck, each one tied down tight, covered with a tarp. The frogs croaked louder than ever, as if they could feel what was coming. Saturday arrived. By 9 in the morning, the street was jammed with cars, coolers, and folding chairs. Strangers poured into my yard. Music shook the ground. The smell of sunscreen and cheap beer filled the air. I stood on the porch watching calmly. Every hidden camera was rolling. Karen made her grand entrance an hour later, purple swimsuit, wide hat, megaphone in hand. She climbed onto the diving board like a queen addressing her subjects. "Welcome everyone to the Summer Kickoff Bash," she shouted. The crowd roared. She raised her glass. "To community spirit, to our summer kingdom." That was my cue. I walked to my truck, pulled the tarp back, and lifted the latch. The first crate burst open, dozens of frogs hopping across the grass, the deck, the pool steps. A woman screamed as 3 landed in her cooler. People laughed, thinking it was a prank. Until I opened the next crate, and the next. Hundreds of frogs leapt forward, a tidal wave of green chaos. Screams erupted. Karen's megaphone screeched feedback as she shouted, "Stay calm, it's just frogs." But her words drowned in the rising chorus of croaks. Frogs jumped into the pool, onto floaties, into drinks. One landed right on Karen's shoulder. She shrieked, flailed, and stumbled backward into the water. Cameras flashed. Phones filmed. The self-proclaimed queen of the HOA thrashing in her community pool, surrounded by an army of frogs. People slipped on. The deck fell into the grass, ran toward their cars. Someone yelled, "They're everywhere." A man tripped over a cooler. Another screamed when frogs leapt into his open trunk. It was complete pandemonium, and I didn't lift a finger. I just leaned against the truck, watching, smiling slightly while my cameras captured every second. Karen finally crawled out of the pool, soaked mascara streaked down her face. "You did this!" she screamed at me, voice cracking. But nobody was listening. Her followers were too busy laughing or running. She slipped again, fell backward into the mud, and another frog landed right on her chest. The crowd howled. By the time the last car peeled out, the yard looked like a battlefield. Overturned chairs, empty cups, frogs everywhere. The noise faded, replaced by the soft, rhythmic croaking that echoed through the evening air. I stood alone, surrounded by chaos, breathing in the peace I'd missed for so long. That night the internet exploded. Videos of the frog invasion spread like wildfire. Karen slipping off the diving board, Karen screaming, Karen covered in frogs. The captions were brutal. HOA Queen dethroned. Frog justice served. Within 24 hours, she was the town's biggest meme. When I saw Paul the next morning, he was grinning ear to ear. "You did it," he said, holding up his phone to show me the trending clip. I just shrugged. Sometimes nature has a way of setting things right. That evening, the HOA held an emergency meeting. Karen showed up looking wrecked, hair frizzed, voice hoarse, still smelling faintly of chlorine. She tried to play the victim, shouting about sabotage. But every time she spoke, someone pulled out their phone and replayed her meltdown. Even her allies couldn't keep straight faces. By the end of the meeting, she was removed from her position. Just like that, her reign was over. When I got home, the frogs had gone slipping back into the wetlands where they belonged. The pool was quiet again, calm, clear, peaceful. I sat on the porch with my dog at my feet, listening to the cicadas and the distant croaks fading into the night. Karen had tried to claim my home, my peace, my freedom, but in the end she was undone not by anger or violence but by her own arrogance. Sometimes you don't have to fight fire with fire. Sometimes you just let nature take care of it.